We see these incredible images from the International Space Station, spacewalks, the views. But have you ever really thought about, like, the day-to-day grind, month after month up there?
It's easy to forget the routine behind the spectacular, isn't it?
Totally. Well, today we've got something special. We're doing a deep dive into some personal logs, like a diary, from someone who spent a long time on the ISS.
That's right. And these logs you shared, they're fascinating. They cover roughly 2 months, maybe a bit more, well into their mission.
And it's not just science reports, is it? It's everything.
Exactly. You get the science, the experiments, sure, but also equipment breaking down, connecting with family, the whole psychological side of being isolated up there for so long. It's all in there.
So our mission today, for everyone listening, is basically to pull out the really juicy bits, the most insightful moments from these weeks in orbit. Your shortcut to understanding what it's really like.
A behind-the-scenes look, you could say.
Okay, let's dive in. First up, something that really struck me. An incident with the mice they had on board for experiments.
Ah, yes, the mice. Crucial for research, but this log entry, it was quite heavy.
Tell us about it.
Well, they found one of the mice really badly injured. It was missing a limb. The log suggests maybe other mice did it, or maybe it hurt itself somehow. It was clearly distressed.
Oh, wow. That's tough. And the crew's reaction.
That's what's really interesting. They were quite upset, understandably. But the log also mentions a bit of disagreement. Mission Control didn't tell them immediately.
Really? Why not?
Well, Mission Control apparently wanted to let them sleep, not disturb their schedule. They figured they'd deal with it in the morning briefing.
But the crew didn't see it that way.
No, the log entry is quite clear. They felt they should have been woken up, that they needed to know right away. They wanted to be involved in the decision about the mouse. It shows the sense of responsibility they felt, even for the research animals.
That's quite powerful. It shows a different side to things, doesn't it? This contrast between ground control trying to manage schedules and the crew's immediate emotional connection.
Definitely. And it's interesting because the same astronaut also writes about watching these mice adapt to zero-G.
Oh, like how?
They described the mice initially being clumsy, disoriented, much like the astronauts themselves were when they first arrived, bumping into things, figuring out how to move.
Huh. So they saw a bit of themselves in the mice.
Pretty much. It was this direct parallel, seeing the mice eventually get the hang of floating around, just like the crew learned to navigate the station effortlessly over time. A neat observation about adaptation.
Speaking of adapting to space, another entry talks about movie night, which sounds normal,
Except they were watching the movie Gravity.
Right. Can you imagine watching that movie while floating inside the actual ISS?
The astronaut describes this funny thing how everyone instinctively tried to position themselves as if they were lying down to watch the screen.
Even though they're weightless.
Exactly. That Earth-brain connection, you know? Lying down equals relaxing, watching a movie. It's so ingrained, gravity or no gravity.
That's fascinating. It makes you wonder how much our behavior is just Earth habits.
It really does. And of course, they had the ultimate insider's view on the film's accuracy.
I bet. What did they think?
They were apparently impressed by some of the realism, how the station looked, but also, pointing out the inaccuracies. It must have been surreal watching this disaster movie set in your actual home.
Absolutely. And there was a funny moment, too, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah. The log mentions Samantha Cristoforetti floating past the screen right during that scene where Sandra Bullock's character is minimally clothed, a perfectly timed photo bomb they just missed capturing.
Oh. Classic space station moment, I guess. Okay, moving from the surreal to something really personal, connecting with family. There's an entry about calling his daughter.
Yes, his 11-year-old daughter, Charlotte. He hadn't seen her in person since leaving for Baikonur, that's the launch site in Kazakhstan, over a month before.
That must be incredibly tough.
For sure. And the log notes how phone calls can be difficult, especially with kids. Short answers, not much connection.
Yeah, I can imagine. How was school? Fine. What did you do? Nothing.
Exactly that. But the video conference was different. Much better.
So he could actually show her things.
Yes. He gave her a virtual tour of the station, showed her the different modules, introduced her to some crewmates, made it much more engaging for her.
That's brilliant, sharing his world with her.
And he planned it really carefully, timed it so they'd be passing over the Bahamas, and he took her virtually to the cupola window for the view.
Special. The cupola has those amazing panoramic windows, right?
Oh, the best view in the house, yeah. He also took photos specifically for her during the call and sent them down, just making that connection as real as possible across the distance. It really highlights how vital that link to home is for morale.
Absolutely critical. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Crew dynamics, celebrations. There's an entry about a birthday.
Yes, Samantha Cristoforetti's birthday. They were planning a special dinner. The log notes, it's a big deal in Russian space culture, celebrating birthdays properly.
So these little traditions become really important up there.
Hugely important for morale, team bonding. And this was happening as Samantha, Terry Virts, and Anton Shkaplerov were actually getting ready to leave soon.
So mixed feelings then.
You can feel it in the writing, sadness about them leaving, knowing they'll be missed. But also this slightly funny, very practical thought.
What's that?
Fewer people means lower CO2 levels. He was actually looking forward to the air quality improving slightly after they left.
Huh. Only on a space station.
Mm-hmm.
And they exchange gifts too.
Yeah, another tradition, using personal items, even things like wrapping paper they brought up, especially. It's these small human touches.
And then there was that funny language discussion.
Oh, right. A late-night chat comparing Russian and English swear words. Apparently, it got so involved they ended up calling a Russian language instructor down in Houston for clarification.
No way. From the ISS.
Yep. Just a casual call about curse words. And the astronaut knows how, for a moment, it felt totally normal, just hanging out, talking. They almost forgot they were on this long mission, orbiting Earth, a fleeting moment of normalcy.
Wow. Okay, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of space life. Something essential, but maybe not glamorous. The toilet.
Ah, yes, the waste and hygiene compartment, or WHC. Absolutely critical. The logs really drive home how much they depend on it working.
It's more than just a toilet, though, isn't it? It's tied into the life support.
Exactly, especially the urine processor part. The ISS has this amazing near closed-loop water system. They recycle pretty much everything.
Including urine into drinking water.
You got it. That processor is key. It purifies urine, recovers the water, which they can then drink or even split into oxygen. It's fundamental for long missions where you can't just get water deliveries all the time.
That's incredible technology. And there was some kind of trade going on.
Yeah, bit of space bartering. The log mentions the U.S. side processing urine from the Russian segment in exchange for electricity generated on the U.S. side. Practical interdependence.
Makes sense. But things didn't stay working smoothly, did they?
No. The urine processor broke down. Big problem.
Like how big a problem?
Well, the holding tank for the unprocessed urine starts filling up fast, and the astronaut describes having to change out this full, heavy tank in the middle of the night. Not pleasant.
Ugh. Space station plumbing issues?
Pretty much. And there's this mention of space station etiquette. You don't leave a full tank for the next person.
Uh-huh. Good to know. So they had to fix the main unit.
Right. Replacing the broken part, the distillation assembly. It was a complex job, took half a day, lots of careful steps, consulting with the ground, safety procedures. It's not just plumbing, it's critical life support.
Okay. So they're literally in the middle of fixing the toilet and then drama from the outside.
Exactly. A Russian Progress resupply ship launches from Baikonur. Everything looks good initially.
Right.
Then the news comes through, major malfunction. The Progress is tumbling out of control in orbit. Loss.
Oh, no. That's huge.
No.
What did that mean for the crew?
Immediate scramble. They had to figure out exactly what supplies they had, onboard food, water, clothes, oxygen, spare parts, everything.
Because they rely on these resupply missions.
Yeah, absolutely. And this wasn't the first loss. An American supply ship had failed previously, so reserves were already tighter than usual. Plus, the cosmonauts had personal items on that Progress, irreplaceable stuff. Gone.
Devastating. And the astronaut writing the logs still had to fix the toilet.
Yep. Life and essential maintenance goes on. The log describes dealing with the toilet repair, figuring out how to handle urine waste without the processor working, storing the broken parts safely, all while this major crisis is unfolding.
Talk about pressure. Did they manage the situation on board?
They did. And the log notes the immediate offer to share U.S. supplies with the Russian crew. That spirit of cooperation really shone through.
But the failed Progress had bigger implications, right? For the crew launches.
Huge implications. The Soyuz rocket, the one used to fly crews up and down, uses a very similar upper stage to the Progress. So suddenly there's this massive concern. Is the Soyuz safe? What if that failed on the next crew launch?
That's terrifying, the potential consequences.
Grim. Very grim. But amidst all that, there was some good news.
The toilet.
They fixed the toilet. Got the urine processor working again. A massive relief, providing that critical water recycling capability back.
Thank goodness for small, or actually rather large, mercies. But the progress failures still caused delays.
Yes. Terry, Samantha, and Anton's return to Earth was postponed, and consequently, the launch of the next crew to the station was also pushed back.
How did the departing crew take the delay?
The logs suggest mixed reactions. Some saw it as more time for research, others were likely just eager to get home, and the astronaut, writing the log, facing the prospect of being up there longer, potentially with fewer crewmates for a while.
Wow. Okay, so broken toilet fixed, resupply lost, crew departures delayed. What next? A smoke alarm.
Seriously.
Yep, never a dull moment. The astronaut is on the treadmill getting some exercise, and bam, smoke alarm goes off in node 3.
What caused it? A fire.
Probably not an actual fire, most likely dust kicked up or maybe something in the treadmill motor itself, but the station's safety systems react instantly.
Ventilation in that whole module shuts down automatically, including a key piece of equipment called the ch7.
Tidra, what's that?
It's a CO2 scrubber, pulls carbon dioxide out of the air, very important, and now it's offline.
And they could just turn it back on.
Ground control tried remotely, but no luck. So now, not only did they have a potential smoke source issue, but CO2 levels were going to start rising in that area.
Ugh, high CO2 is bad, right? Headaches, feeling sluggish.
Exactly. And the astronaut expresses frustration in the log, feeling like the managers on the ground maybe don't fully grasp how physically unpleasant and draining high CO2 is for the crew. It's not just a number on a screen.
Another hidden challenge of living in a can, basically.
Pretty much. And managing your own reaction to that physical discomfort, the frustration, it's all part of the psychological load.
Amidst all this, though, there are still those links to home. The weekly calls with Amiko.
Yes, Amiko, his wife. Those video conferences were clearly a lifeline. Virtual tours of the house, just seeing familiar surroundings.
Keeping that connection strong?
Absolutely. The log mentions a funny time before when he actually spotted the fridge water filter needed changing during a call. But this time, the call focused on a broken pool speaker back home.
A pool speaker? From space?
Yeah. He spent a chunk of the precious video call trying to troubleshoot this speaker remotely.
How did that go?
Not well. The call dropped, and he instantly regretted wasting that valuable connection time on, a speaker.
Oh, man, I can feel the frustration. That time is so limited.
Totally. The log mentions calling her back later just to apologize and reconnect properly. It really shows how much those calls mean. But hey, spoiler alert, he did eventually help fix the speaker the next week using online manuals.
Huh. Astronaut and remote tech support. Okay, so the progress failure is still hanging over them.
Yes, definitely. The logs mention a continuing lack of solid information from the Russians about why it failed, which keeps the uncertainty about the Soyuz safety bubbling away.
And the crew return date is still up in the air.
Well, Terry is checking daily with Anton, the Russian commander, for updates. Then Gennady Podolka, another cosmonaut, shares some info suggesting the progress failure might have been caused by something that could affect their Soyuz too.
Yikes. That's not comforting.
Not at all. A real sobering thought they might have been in serious danger on their own launch without even knowing it.
Jeez. Okay, back to station problems. That ch7 CO2 scrubber is still offline.
Still offline in Node 3. So Terry and the log-writing astronaut decide to tackle the repair themselves.
How hard can it be, right? Famous last words.
Apparently incredibly hard. The log describes it as a nightmare. Valves impossible to reach, bolts tighten like crazy. Terry even hurt his hand trying to loosen one.
Oh, man.
They ended up having to move the whole heavy ch7 unit to the Japanese module, Kibo, just to get better access to work on it.
Did that help?
They got it disassembled and presumably fixed the internal issue, but then trying to put it back in Node 3, it wouldn't fit.
You're kidding. After all that.
Nope. Something was stopping it from seating properly. And they eventually figure out it's these washers, seemingly unnecessary washers interfering with the fit.
So just take them out.
Well, the astronaut expects a huge bureaucratic runaround from NASA to get permission. Procedures, analysis, meetings.
Standard procedure, probably.
But surprise! Ground control gives them the go-ahead surprisingly quickly. Remove the washers. They get the washers out, and with Terry's help, slot the ch7 back in. Finally, a massive, frustrating job done.
They earned a break after that one. Any weird space stuff happening?
Well, there's a funny bit about finding a used Band-Aid floating around, mistaking it for candy for a split second. Gross, but also kind of darkly humorous. Samantha apparently had a similar experience before.
The glamorous life of an astronaut.
And then something stranger the astronaut describes waking up suddenly with a full-body convulsion just as they saw a flash, likely a cosmic ray hitting their eye. Weird.
Okay, that is weird. So any news on the crew schedule?
Yes, official word finally comes down. Terry, Samantha, and Anton will depart on June 11th. The new crew won't arrive until July 22nd.
Mother down.
Part of it is the Soyuz spacecraft docked to the station. It has a certified on-orbit lifespan, a limit to how long it can safely stay docked. They were getting close to that limit.
Right, okay. So with the departure date set, did they try the repaired Seadra again?
First thing after the planning meeting. Power it up.
Tuck.
Sense silence. And nope. Still not working.
Are you kidding me? After all that?
The astronaut apparently had a silent scream, just utter frustration, facing another weekend with high CO2 looming.
I don't blame them. That's maddening.
And you can feel the psychological pull mounting, the feeling that the ground teams aren't grasping the urgency or the impact on well-being.
Does Amico pick up on it?
Instantly. He emails and calls her, and she immediately connects his low mood and frustration to the CO2 issue. She just gets it. In a way, maybe the ground teams don't. That understanding is huge.
So the next crew is delayed, 3 are leaving. What's the mood at dinner?
They discuss the new landing date. And the astronaut starts thinking about the 6 weeks they'll have the U.S. segment mostly to themselves before the new crew arrives.
Looking forward to it.
Actually, yeah. The log says they're kind of anticipating the quiet, the chance to just float around, even jokes about floating naked through the modules.
The freedom. Though there's still some uncertainty.
A little bit. Anton, the departing Russian commander, seems unsure about the exact landing date details, which maybe hints at some internal communication wrinkles within Roscosmos.
Always something. Okay, amidst all this high-stakes stuff, there's time for coffee.
Not just any coffee, espresso. The European Space Agency sent up an experimental espresso machine.
Espresso in space. How does that even work?
With difficulty, apparently. The logs describe troubleshooting calls to get it working right in zero-G, but they managed it.
And the result?
The first ever espresso shot brewed and drunk in space. Samantha got the first sip.
Did the astronaut say anything profound?
According to the log, they quipped something like, "That's one small sip for a woman, one giant leap for coffee kind," playing on the Armstrong line.
Nice. Was it good?
Apparently. Though the log also mentions the rumored $1 million cost and the very limited supply of special espresso pods. Very exclusive coffee.
I'll bet. Okay, back to orbital mechanics. The station needs boosts to stay up, right?
Correct. Its orbit naturally decays, so docked spacecraft like the Progress periodically fire their engines to nudge it higher. It's routine.
Until it's not.
Precisely. They try a routine reboost using a docked Progress, and the engine fires for literally 1 second, then quits.
Oh, come on. More Progress problems.
Yep. More worries about Progress reliability, and by extension, Soyuz reliability. It just adds to the background anxiety.
And they're still dealing with the fallout from the last Progress failure.
Very much so. Still carefully managing trash, sorting through discarded items to see if anything useful was accidentally thrown out because supplies are tight.
What kind of useful things?
Well, the log mentions finding used underwear while sorting trash. So maybe not that useful, but it paints a picture.
Okay, definitely paints a picture. Any good news on the tech front?
Actually, yes. That stubborn Node 3 Seadra, the CO2 scrubber, after replacing a fan motor, it starts working again. Just like that.
Finally, a win.
A huge win for air quality and morale, just in time for the farewell dinner for the departing crew.
So a nice final meal together.
Yeah, Friday night dinner on the Russian segment. But then things take another sharp turn. Terry gets an urgent call from the ground, looks worried.
What is it this time?
The astronaut is told to call their other daughter, Samantha, immediately. It sounds like an emergency.
Oh no, that sounds serious, especially given past experiences.
Exactly. The log mentions a similar urgent call during a previous mission that turned out to be devastating family news, so instant anxiety. And then they can't get through right away, communication blackout, period. Agonizing. Wait.
I can't imagine. What was the emergency?
Turns out, Samantha was just feeling lonely and sad after a family event back home and wanted to talk to her dad.
Oh, thank goodness.
Better.
But also quite the scare.
For sure. But the astronaut reflects on it later, understanding why she did it, realizing the sacrifices the family is making too. It's not just the astronaut who's on a mission.
That's a really important perspective. Any other reflections around this time?
Yes, a brief but poignant note about hearing of Beau Biden's death, leading to some philosophical thoughts about mortality, life before birth, shared with Amico via email.
Deep thoughts from orbit. Does the astronaut talk about, like, spiritual experiences up there?
Interestingly, no. The log entry suggests more of a scientific curiosity and awe at the universe rather than traditional spiritual epiphanies. Mentions a non-religious upbringing influencing that perspective.
Fascinating. Okay, let's move on to a major experiment mentioned in the logs. Fluid shifts. Sounds important.
Hugely important. It's all about understanding why astronauts' vision often changes during long space flights and the role of pressure changes inside the head.
The astronaut experienced this themselves.
Yes, on previous flights, it's a major concern because the changes can sometimes be long-lasting, potentially even permanent, a huge hurdle for, say, a Mars mission.
So what's the theory? Why does vision change?
The main idea is that in weightlessness, fluids shift upwards in the body, increasing the pressure inside the skull, intracranial pressure. Think of it like being upside down constantly. This pressure might affect the optic nerve or the shape of the eyeball.
Makes sense. But it's hard to measure that pressure directly.
Very difficult in space. There are other potential factors too. Maybe high CO2 levels contribute or sodium intake. And curiously, so far, it seems to predominantly affect male astronauts. Still lots of unknowns.
Are they trying to counteract the fluid shift?
That's where the pants that suck come in. Officially called ch7, it's a Russian device. Basically vacuum pants that pull fluids back down towards the legs, lowering pressure in the head.
Pants that suck. Got it. Safe to use.
Generally, but the log mentions a past incident where a cosmonaut using them actually passed out briefly, so there are risks.
So this fluid shifts experiment involved using these ch7 pants.
Yes, among many other things. The log details days of preparation, blood draws, urine samples, saliva, ultrasounds of the eyes, heart, brain vessels. It's described as maybe the most complicated human experiment ever done on the ISS.
Wow. How did it go for the astronaut?
Wearing the ch7s initially felt good, relieving that head pressure sensation common in space. But then there was a scary moment.
What happened?
Misha Kornienko was controlling the pressure in the pants, and there was a malfunction or miscommunication. The pressure dropped way too low, too fast. The astronaut nearly grayed out.
Whoa. Did they stop the experiment?
No, they got the pressure stabilized and continued. More measurements, ultrasounds, using little pre-applied space tattoos to make sure the ultrasound probe was always in the exact same spot.
Space tattoos. The details are amazing. Did the pants help overall?
The astronaut notes feeling physically better while wearing them, less head congestion, so promising, despite the glitch.
Amidst these intense experiments, any more of those little observational moments?
Yeah, a quick note about seeing Samantha in the toilet module, just noticing how her feet automatically hooked onto handrails to stabilize herself, a totally unconscious adaptation to zero-G. Cool little detail.
It's those things that make it real. Okay, so the departure date is looming. One last dinner.
The final Friday night dinner with Terry, Samantha, and Anton. Russian food supplies are running low, so they're sharing everything.
How's the space food holding up after months?
The descriptions aren't glowing. Both Russian and American rations sound pretty unappetizing at this point. Lots of cravings for fresh fruit, salads, even cheap Earth beer.
I bet. Any weird cravings.
Talk of scurvy comes up jokingly. They were really looking forward to the next SpaceX resupply, hoping for fresh food and essential supplies like shit cans.
Their charming name for waste containers.
That's the one. And also the gorilla suit. The astronaut's brother apparently snuck one into the cargo manifest for the next SpaceX flight.
A gorilla suit? Why?
The justification. There's never been a gorilla suit in space before.
Yeah.
Why not?
I guess that's a reason. So reflecting on their time together.
Yeah, looking back at what Expedition 43 accomplished, but also a bit of a critique in the logs.
Oh, about what?
About the constant, sometimes excessive back and forth thank yous between space and ground, the mutual adoration society, as the log calls it. Seems it could get a bit time-consuming.
Interesting peek behind the curtain. Then the formal handover.
Right. The change of command ceremony, very traditional, based on naval customs. Terry formally hands over command of the ISS to Gennady. Speeches, acknowledgments, a significant moment.
And preparing the departing crew for landing.
The astronaut gives Terry and Samantha a heads up about what Soyuz re-entry feels like. Vivid descriptions like being in a crashing vehicle, tumbling, heat shield burning away, calls the Soyuz a Soviet beater car compared to smoother rides.
Sounds intense. Did the astronaut enjoy it?
Surprisingly, yes. Says they personally find the landing experience kind of fun, different strokes.
Definitely. And then the actual departure.
Yeah, the logs capture the emotion, saying goodbye, the hatch closing ceremony. Even though the astronaut was looking forward to some quiet time, there's an immediate sense of emptiness, Isolation.
You could still hear them after the hash closes.
For a while, yeah, through the station's intercom. He even has to warn Terry his mic is still open. Hearing their voices while trying to work, like ghosts still on board.
Scary.
Then watching the undocking on NASA TV, sending a final good luck message. And the realization hits once they land, they're suddenly incredibly far away, inaccessible. Back on Earth, while you're still up there. The quiet afterwards, the log says, was profound. 9 more months to go.
Wow. A heavy moment. So alone time begins. How's the first weekend?
A rare Sunday off, actually. And it coincides with Gennady setting the new world record for most total days spent in space by any human.
A milestone. Time for celebration. Or relaxing.
Tries to relax, maybe surf the web, but the internet connection is down. Ground side issue. Typical.
Murphy's Law applies even in space.
Oh.
Did he miss anything important?
Only the live launch of the next SpaceX resupply mission. The one with the crucial docking adapter, food, water, clothes for the next crew, spacewalk gear, and the gorilla suit.
Oh, no. Did he find out what happened?
Finally gets internet back later and sees the headline, SpaceX rocket exploded just after launch, everything lost.
Not again. That's the third one, right?
Third resupply failure in less than a year, counting the previous U.S. one and the Russian progress. Devastating.
How did the astronaut react?
Stunned, thinking about all the lost cargo, the vital docking adapter, even the silly gorilla suit, and weirdly feeling left out because they didn't even get to see the launch or the explosion live. That's a strange feeling, disconnected from the disaster affecting them directly.
Exactly. Amico fills him in on the details later via phone. But the big picture is grim. Consumables on both sides of the station are now critically low.
Does this make them question sending up the next crew? The logs definitely raise that question. Is it wise to bring more people up with supplies so tight and the CO2 issue still potentially lurking? Also, a bit of an I told you so moment.
Regarding what?
A suggestion made earlier about spacesuit glove design, which was dismissed, now seems pretty relevant because replacement gloves were on that lost SpaceX flight.
Hindsight. And the lost science.
Yeah, real empathy in the log for the school kids whose experiments were on board. Lost for the second time after the previous failure. Just heartbreaking.
What a blow. How does the log entry end?
On a note of resilience, really. Acknowledging the risk, the setbacks, but emphasizing the importance of trying again. The spirit of exploration, basically.
So after diving into these incredibly detailed logs, what are the big takeaways?
I mean, it's just this extraordinary blend, isn't it? The routine meals, exercise, sleep happening alongside these massive events, critical failures, complex repairs, groundbreaking science, all layered together.
And you really get a sense of the human element. How much depends on the crew working together, solving problems on the fly, supporting each other, and how vital that connection to Earth, to family really is.
Absolutely. Technology is amazing, but it breaks. It's the people, their ingenuity, their resilience that keeps things going. And you see the constant awareness of risk, but also this drive to push forward.
Hopefully listening to this, people got some of those aha moments.
Yeah.
Like realizing how deeply ingrained Earth-based instincts are, even in weightlessness.
Or understanding just how complex and frankly fragile those life support systems are. The toilet isn't just a toilet. It's part of keeping everyone alive. Or feeling that emotional roller coaster alongside the astronaut, the frustration, the joy, the anxiety, the relief.
Exactly. We really appreciate you joining us for this deep dive, digging into what life is really like up there, beyond the highlight reels.
It's been fascinating to explore these firsthand accounts.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Seeing the incredible resilience in these logs, the way they face failure, adapt, fix things, and keep going day after day. What does that tell us? About the human spirit facing the extreme, whether it's in